with Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
What stood out to me, number one, was his commitment to Kirk Cousins, it seemed. And they still have to figure out whether they can lower that cap number. When and if they do lower that cap number, how many more years are they then committing? But just the idea, whether it was Kwesi speaking of how accurate Cousins is and how when you put him in great situations, he succeeds more often than not. He didn't pound the table for him, but it seemed to be pretty adamant, or he seemed to be pretty adamant that Kirk's going to be their guy.
Is that Andrew Siciliano there?
Yeah, that was
NFL Network chiming in here. Okay, Mackey and Judd, daily Minnesota sports, entertainment, therapy, speculation. We got Write That Down predictions later on in the show. A tweet from J Sports 1203. The Vikings have made it clear they are rolling with Kirk Cousins, but somehow you believe Phil Mackey and Score North over the Wilfs, Kevin O'Connell, and Kwesi. YouTubers don't make decisions, nor is what they say facts. How do you know, Jay, that the Wilf ownership group isn't consulting daily the CEO of Vikings Twitter? Okay, listen, I have to keep those conversations private.
Even we don't know that.
Some conversations are meant to be private behind closed doors. So
right.
Don't make assumptions. Okay,
There's a bat phone.
There is. We do have a bat phone.
We have a bat phone. They're calling you on the bat phone. Yep.
The reckless speculation phone, if you will. All right.
reckless speculation.
All right, let's get to it here because there's an article on PanthersWire.com. I'm just going to read here. 2 weeks ago, a claim from Purple Daily connected the Panthers with Vikings quarterback Kirk Cousins, alleging Carolina made an inquiry into the three-time Pro Bowler. But Jonathan M. Alexander of the Charlotte Observer has sniffed out some opposition to that particular account, writing that the Panthers didn't think much of the purported interest. Quote, while there were reports that the Panthers inquired about Cousins in Minnesota, two sources said that call never occurred, the Charlotte Observer says. The coaching staff and front office were actually in a meeting when they heard the news and laughed it off. All right, Judd, what are your thoughts on the Panthers brass laughing at the notion that they would have interest in Kirk Cousins?
I actually addressed this online on Twitter because I got this note from a couple folks about how, well, they laughed at your report. I love there's this weird childish need to think that if what is perceived as, and this is where people drive me nuts, if what is perceived as an authority figure like says something, it's like they dunked on you. It's like, hold on a second. They dunked on me. Are we 12? They dunked on you by laughing. Okay, no, they didn't. First of all, they're the Panthers. They are a dumpster fire. Second of all, it means
what are they laughing about?
Well, but the thing is, I love like when a reporter reports something, a rumor, or has a quote, and like a coach or player comes back and snipes back. And the immediate thing from the faction of adults who don't grow up is they dunked on you. You see that? And it's like, just because they have a job doesn't mean that they dunked on you. Like, if they do dunk, that's awesome. And like, if it's a good line, but if they're just like, they laughed, oh, they're dunking on you, Zolgad. No, it's not. It's the Carolina Panthers. Their building's on fire. They're going to be fired. So anyway, as I tweeted back, though, it means one of two things. One, they're lying. First of all, it was a phone call. It was never, I never said, I was never told, oh, they engaged in this trade discussions and it went a long way. Mm-hmm. All I said was, and I stand by this, the Carolina Panthers called. So one, yes, I'm saying they are lying. Ladies and gentlemen, sports teams lie. In fact, almost always take what they say and reverse it, and the opposite is true. So that's my contention. But then
Pete Carroll literally said 2 weeks ago, we have no intention of trading Russell Wilson.
And that's fine, but I mean, just assume sports teams are, if you have a teenage kid who drives and comes home late and comes up with some lame excuse, assume sports teams are the same way. They're your lying child. So that's scenario one. So I just contend they're lying, which is fine. They're the Panthers. Again, they're a joke. But the second one is this, and this is where the Cousins stands shut up real quick. Let's say it's true. Let's say they never called. And let's say they saw that report on the crawl on ESPN or something, and they laughed. What does that say about your quarterback? So, like, I am willing to bend over backwards to say my report. In fact, I'll say this. Let's say it's inaccurate. Let's say it's completely wrong. No, I don't really think
Let's
that.
say you lied and
But
made it up,
I made it
Judd.
up. Yeah, let's say I made it up.
Which you didn't. I just want to be clear. You did not make it up.
I did not, but let's say I did for the sake of this discussion. And the Carolina Panthers laughed. They didn't say, like, if they were going to say we didn't make that call, they would say, no, we didn't make that call. They laughed. And now the Cousins Crusaders will say, they laughed at you, Judd. They were laughing at you. No, they weren't.
Our bottom scroll now on the YouTube channel now says Judd Solgat is a liar.
Is a liar. It's a lie.
You lied.
It's a lie, but it wasn't a lie. But anyway, they laughed. What does that say about Kirk Cousins? Ladies and gentlemen, I call right now. Call this number on the screen below.
Yeah.
They laughed about it.
It's so interesting, like this whole dynamic. I mean, the Panthers, that division is as wide open as it's been in years, right? No Tom Brady, no Sean Payton, no Drew Brees. Calvin Ridley's suspended for the year. The Falcons are kind of a train wreck. Matt Ryan's getting older, and the Panthers have been a 5-win team the last few years. And let's just say an opportunity presents itself for not a Hall of Famer, but like, a competent, slightly above average starting quarterback, which I think they would die to have, right? Sam Darnold's a dumpster fire. This version of Cam Newton is just one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. And they are reportedly, according to the Charlotte Observer, laughing at the notion of Kirk Cousins. It's interesting. And it actually kind of brings, there's a second part to this. I've received some variation of this question or comment at least 100 times over the last month and a half, ever since the Kirk Cousins offseason discussion took place. That and this one's from Derek on Twitter. Cousins haters will say that he's terrible and can't win a Super Bowl and all these things. Mm-hmm. But those same Cousins haters also say that he should net a haul of draft picks and assets from a team looking to win a Super Bowl in a trade. Mm-hmm. To which I say, first of all, like, no one's saying he's garbage, so people need to stop with that, okay? Two things can and I think are true, can be and are true in this situation. Number one, I personally think that Kirk Cousins, especially at that cap hit, lacks the intangibles. He lacks the late game acumen. This is a dude who lined up under the right guard at one point in a key situation during a game last year. This is a dude who, when you start to dig into the advanced metrics, is worse on third down. He's worse against the best teams, et cetera. I think he lacks certain intangibles that will prevent his teams from winning a championship. But the second thing that is true is that there are several quarterback-needy teams that will still kick the tires, just like the Vikings did in 2018. The Steelers need a quarterback. They don't have one. Like, they literally don't have a quarterback. So they can probably overlook some of these things, or they can say, oh, well, listen, Mike Zimmer didn't know what he was doing. We can kind of fix this thing. So I just get sick. Like, I'm putting you in a box. I don't know why Judd's hiding behind his microphone right now.
I'm not. I lined up wrong.
Oh, wow.
I was lining up wrong.
Sure. First, you call the Panthers a dumpster. Taking all these cheap shots. The Panthers are a dumpster fire. They've been to 2 Super Bowls in the last 20 years. You're hiding behind your microphone. You're making fun of Kirk.
The Panthers were no. The Panthers as currently constructed are a joke, a dumpster fire, and stupid enough to take Kirk Cousins.
That part's true. That's the most.
Well, apparently they're not though. They're laughing at the.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah.
But like, I don't know. I'm so confused. Like people don't. Well, if he's the things that you say he is, then why?
Yeah,
okay.
Don't.
Teams keep trading for Russell Westbrook in the NBA. Russell Westbrook puts up a bunch of great stats. And he bounces around with energy, but at no point has he come anywhere close without Kevin Durant 11 years ago to winning a championship. But teams think that, look at the numbers. He's kind of tantalizing. And so he's been traded like 4 times. Teams will always look at the neighbor's yard and find some way to talk themselves into, we're the situation where it makes sense, right?
Exactly.
So it's not a binary black and white thing. I just want to explain that to whoever can't compute the gray area, I guess.
I feel like the problem here is this too, though. And this goes back to a conversation I think we had on Tuesday's show, possibly. But I feel like our listeners and viewers are super smart and get that. But Vikings Twitter, to which Phil, CEO, clearly not doing his job, doesn't get that. And I think that's where the problem lies. So, like, I think we're preaching to the choir of a bunch of very intelligent fans who are like, oh, yeah, we get that, you guys. But then you go on Twitter and it's just this massive cesspool of people you can't fix. And you try, and at some point in time, you're just like, okay, you're not going to get this. And that's the problem. I also think that to extrapolate this entire discussion just a little bit, I think part of the problem too is this one. Fantasy football has made a certain audience believe that statistics are king, and Kirk puts up good stats. And so I don't think they understand. And again, I'm being very careful here because I'm not talking to you folks watching us right now, but just the greater we of, I don't think they understand roster construction, which involves human beings, which involves how they lead, which involves a ton of things. And that's why I keep going back to, when it comes to Kwesi and O'Connell, what you have here, hopefully, is people that can identify what the roster construction should be, starting with the quarterback that, quite frankly, Rick and Mike didn't get right.
What's funny is like the fantasy football crowd, if you're in an auction league, a salary cap league, and I give you the 12th or 14th best fantasy quarterback, which is, I think, where people would probably rank Kirk. He's certainly not like one of the top fantasy quarterbacks. All right, I'm going to give you that quarterback. You have a cap of $200 fictional dollars, but you have to spend, a huge like top 3 of any player in the entire fantasy sphere on that player. Could you still build a winning fantasy roster? Yeah, you could. But you'd have to be so perfect finding value in other areas. It just makes it harder, right? Mm-hmm. As opposed to the guy that grabbed, Kyler Murray for $3 a couple years ago or something in a dynasty league. So
absolutely.
I think just surveying the landscape here. And by the way, this bashing of Kirk Cousins is presented by our friends at Dennis Kirk and DennisKirk.com. So Dennis Kirk has been sort of an OG sponsor for us and partner on Mackey and Judd, Score North, even Purple Daily. And if you are a motorcycle guy or gal, and hopefully spring is on the horizon in the Twin Cities, we're talking about all sorts of parts, accessories, apparel. If you love to ride, Dennis Kirk has you covered with over 160,000 parts in stock, free shipping on orders over $89, and if you order before 8 p.m., they ship the same day. Or they ship the next day. The order's placed on that day.
Goes out quick.
Goes up very quickly, yes. DennisKirk.com if you love to ride. DennisKirk.com. What do you guys think? Let's put ourselves in we kind of did this with the Panthers a little bit, but put yourself in the shoes of a general manager in Pittsburgh, Indianapolis, Carolina, Tampa, post Tom Brady.
Yes.
What do you think those teams, now that Russell Wilson's off the board, Aaron Rodgers is off the board, and you got Jimmy G, you got some other random guys out there. Maybe there's a Carson Wentz, but Deshaun Watson, obviously, we're going to find out more on Friday. But what do you think those front offices are saying about Kirk Cousins behind the scenes in terms of him being a potential option?
Sure. Well, I think, first of all, this is when it comes to the actual discussion that you're talking about, I think it's far more contractual at this point than talent or player, because I think that would come up, but the contract is king right now. Mm-hmm. And all indications are that Kirk is fully intent on playing out this current contract and then going back and hitting the free agent market after 2022. Now, the discussion with the Vikings then would have to be, how much of this contract are you going to pick up? But knowing that he is almost certainly going to walk, I really think, Phil, that it becomes, unfortunately, for those who think like us, that it would be great to trade Kirk and get something back in return. I think it becomes more and more difficult to, if you are the Steelers or the Bucks or a team like that, to stomach what he's going to do to you unless you thought that he was a surefire 1-year answer and basically a Super Bowl winning QB, which I think most teams in a 1-year window would probably say no. So just honestly right now, I think the conversation would bypass Cousins quickly unless you knew that he was going to do an extension with your team and be traded to you and then stay there. But there is no indication at this point in time that he is willing to do that. So I don't think there's does Kirk Cousins' name come up? Absolutely. Is it enticing given his current contractual status? I don't think so, unfortunately.
So I think Kirk Cousins is a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for other reasons that, like you're saying, you start to add in contract, you start to add in leadership and some of these other things. I think teams value Jimmy Garoppolo higher than they value Kirk Cousins. So, because Garoppolo, that contract is up for reworking. I think his cap hit's there's not a lot of guaranteed money left. It's like maybe a couple million. I mean, they can cut him and save like $25 million, but they'd rather trade him. But his cap hit's like $27 million or $29 million or something like that. So if I get to save a bunch of money and bring a guy in who has played in bigger games than Kirk, right? He's played in title games. He's played in the Super Bowl. Had a lead in the second half of the Super Bowl. Missed a big throw, but he can drive that car when given a car. Correct. He can drive it deeper in the playoffs than Kirk has been able to. Correct. And he's viewed as a better leader and a guy that connects better with teammates. I mean, all those things, salary, everything factored in. Yep. I do think teams, when they're going through their list of like the Colts and the Steelers, I think Jimmy G's probably higher up when you include all the factors. I think I wonder, I know you've been doing some digging, and we're on a simultaneous, like, we're DMing with some people and talking about this before the show started here too. Do you think is it too early to say that? Forget about your bias here for a second. What you would do? Do you think the Vikings have actually committed to Kirk as their quarterback in 2022?
Committed, I think, is a strong word. I think they understand that he's obviously under contract and it might be the only option to play this out. But committed beyond 2022?
I mean,
no.
in 2022.
Right.
In 2022.
I think it's trending that way strongly, and I think it's because of so the one thing that would change that, the reason why O'Connell and Kwesi have been very careful, I think, to leave the door open for a Cousins move is because what if somebody comes and blows you away? Like if the Carolina Panthers did say, okay, guys, 6th pick is yours, pick up a little bit of Kirk's salary, that trade gets done. But I think they're committed to this, and this will probably, unless they extend Kirk, which I think would be crazy, but if they don't extend Kirk, I think that this is Kirk's final hammer on this franchise, and it's this: he's got him. He's got him, because if your team is going to trade for Kirk, you are going to say, Kirk, let's sit down and let's do an extension here, baby. Let's do 3 years. And by the way, you'll be paid handsomely. You're not going to get what Rodgers got. And Kirk's going to say, got to be all guaranteed, and it's got to be closer to what Rodgers got than what you're saying, right? So if you think about how this negotiation would go, and I mean, between Kirk and his rep, Mike McCartney, they are experts. I think he's got the Vikings, and I think that they know that, and I think that they are going to hope like hell that they can do enough for Kirk that he can win. Now, let me say, here is, in my opinion, the win if they do this right. I will continue to say, and yes, it's a bit of a, how can I put this nicely? Yes, it's a bit of a abrasive move. But this does give you carte blanche, Phil, to clear out other salaries that you might have had some pushback on by saying we have to do something here. Now, if you run this thing back truly, I think you're crazy. Like then I lose faith. There's a few things here that are very difficult to deal with, and I get that, and that's part of this job. But if you run things back, Phil, or if you extend Kirk, then I will say this: before they ever play a game, I will have lost some faith in the new GM and new coach.
Oh, yeah. I think these guys are really sharp. I think these guys understand modern football and communication and leadership. But if they fall into the comfort zone of like, well, I mean, let's just kind of see, let's just kind of see, let's take 10 years of evidence and let's take one of the worst contracts in the NFL right now in terms of the value that you're actually getting, and let's just try and kind of run it back, then I will also have lost some respect for them. But they do deserve a chance. I mean, if Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi say, listen, all right, I know this contract is kind of a pain in the ass, but we really, really think that Kevin O'Connell can get this dude to another level, then all right, well, because I think a lot of people are also asking, what are you guys going to do if they announce tomorrow he's coming back in whatever form, I promise I will not sit here on a daily basis and bitch about it. All right? All right, cool. I won't speak for Judd and Dex. I won't promise to never bitch about it, but I won't beat the, like, if they make that decision, okay, then, well, let's talk about what it looks like. Let's talk about how can they make the best of it? How can they how can they build a roster, et cetera. But I just at a certain point when a guy is 34 years old, if you're still blaming everything else around him, the common denominator speaks for itself.
And it is time, in fairness, to turn the page on a lot of things here. Like, I don't see how that's I get that people like players individually, but I don't see how that's a debate. Like, you don't bring in new people to keep the status quo. So what excites me personally is the opportunity for change. And unless you've got a franchise quarterback who has just had a great, if you have Russell Wilson, if you're doing our job in Seattle, which Phil is, but he's talking about the Vikings yesterday, right? I can see being taken aback a little bit, like not completely shocked, but Russell Wilson, pretty damn good still, got some time left. So I get that one. But what has Kirk Cousins, and quite frankly, at this point in time, what has this team done to deserve loyalty as far as players go? Adam Thielen's a great player. Okay, yeah, he's had a good career, but he's breaking down and he's older.
Yeah.
But Eric Kendricks is he's a great community guy. Okay, but have they been winning? So, like, what's the loyalty factor? Russell Wilson's Super Bowl champion. Been to a couple of them, right? Yeah. So I guess my question to fans of the Vikings who are fans of, like, don't get rid of this guy and that guy is, what have these guys done exactly that gets you to say, I can't see him being gone?
Yeah. And this, where I agree with you here is I'm not just going to, like, get rid of Thielen, but because I want this passing game.
I threw him out as a name.
Right. But if you're talking about, what are you protecting here? Well, this defense has not been good. It's been below average to potentially even like bottom 5 in some certain areas the last 2 years. Yes. And if there are aging players like Eric Kendricks and Harrison Smith, who are centerpieces of the defense, but again, a defense that has not been very good, and it's not like they're emerging into their prime, then I don't need to be protecting those guys anymore. Those everything's fair game. And just like offensively, I think we look at some of the counting stats and the yardage and look at the touchdown passes and this and that. It's like the Vikings offense was 14th in points per game. They were bottom half of the league in second half points per game. They were number 1 in the NFL. They led the NFL in 3 and outs. So there's no reason to protect anything here. I think everything should be examined and looked at, and if it needs to be torn down for the sake of taking 1 step back to take 2 steps forward, I'm good with it. Mm-hmm. So stay tuned on the Kirk Cousins front. I'm sure there will be news one way or another in the next week, maybe even sooner.
I love this time of year. I love
it's
March.
Fun. It is fun.
Speculation.
All right, we're gonna take a TO here and get to some write that down predictions and an accountability session on this Wednesday, Mackey and Judd.